Good morning. I'm Kaye Lanning Minchew, and today's February 14th, 2023, Valentine's Day. So we're delighted to have with us today Patrick Cruz, and I'm here interviewing Patrick on behalf of the First Baptist Archives and History Committee. And this is a series that we've done with former deacon chairs. So we're delighted to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Well, good. Well, tell us a little bit your full name and a little bit about your background.
Okay. My full name is James Patrick Cruz. I came to LaGrange, Georgia in 1986. Before that, I considered Dublin, Georgia my home. I had lived there ever since the third grade. And so I went to college at Middle Georgia College, just a short distance away in Cochran for 2 years, and then transferred to the University of Georgia. So my first career, believe it or not, was working with the Georgia Extension Service. So for 2 years, I worked there back in Cochran, Georgia, attended First Baptist Church of Cochran, and then I had an opportunity to go to work in banking there in Dublin, in my hometown. So I went there, worked at a bank called Farmers and Merchants Bank for 4 years, and felt like if I was going to advance my career that I needed to go to work for a larger bank. So I'd never been to LaGrange in my life. Had to pull out a map to see exactly where LaGrange, Georgia was. But I came over here, I think it was in the month of June of 1986, looked around, and a very good friend of mine from Dublin was working at C&S Bank, and so he was instrumental in getting me to come to LaGrange and go to work for the bank downtown.
And then where were you born?
I was actually born in Blackshear, Georgia.
Okay.
Southeast Georgia.
South Georgia. So, well, very good. Well, and tell us a little bit about your family today.
Oh, okay. Well, when we moved to LaGrange in 1986, we had one daughter and one on the way. So now I have 3 daughters. They're all members of First Baptist Church. They're all married. We have a total of 6 grandchildren. And so, again, they are all members of the church here.
Good, good. And when you came to LaGrange, how did you end up at First Baptist?
Well, for about the first year, we felt like we had to go home every weekend. So every Friday afternoon, we would make the 3-hour trip to Dublin. And so we really didn't get involved in a church here for that first year. And I'll never forget the day that 2 members of the church, Janice Grizzle and Nancy Hartman, came and knocked on our door and invited us to come to church here. So we came and we visited. We later joined the church, and so this was the only church that we ever visited in LaGrange.
Well, very good. What about when did you get recruited for the deacons or elected for the deacons?
Well, I was one of those people that for many years I didn't feel led to be on the deacon board because I just had strong feelings that wasn't where my area of service would be. So it took me several years. Okay, you're going to make me do a lot of math to figure it out, but I would say at least the first 15 years of being a member, I didn't serve on the deacon board. So I did eventually go on the deacon board and then was asked to serve as deacon chair, which I did wind up serving 2 different times.
And when were you deacon chair?
Oh, my goodness, Kay.
10-year dates. Okay, we'll figure those dates out.
Right.
The Archives Committee can figure that out. But before we get into specifics about your service, what character traits do you think someone needs to be on the deacons and then especially to be deacon chair?
Well, I think the most important trait is that you do have to realize this is a position of service. You're serving the church, you're serving the membership of our church. And so I think, first off, you have to have a servant's heart. I think that the fact that always kept me off the deacon's board was getting involved in all of the nuts and bolts, or believe it or not, politics of being in a church. But we do realize that the deacons in our church do have to make lots of decisions about the operations of the church, and they get involved in personnel matters. And so they carry a lot of the business of the church. So it took me a while to resign myself to the fact that I did not mind getting involved in it. I will say that what had impressed me most about this church when I first came here was the church I'd been in previously. There was a lot of infighting going on in the church. And so I just wanted a break from that for a while. And the one thing I loved about First Baptist at that time was the fact that the church seemed to be in a very harmonious state. A lot of great things to offer for the members of the church, and particularly when you've got young children, we had a lot of programs there.
So very good. And your career since you've been in LaGrange, you've switched out of banking.
Right, I did. Of course, when I came here, I worked for C&S Bank, and it sold out about 8 years, or began to make some changes about 6 years into my career here, and then so they later sold, became Nations Bank, and now we know them as Bank of America. So I worked for CB&T Bank for 8 years. Then I worked for Charter Bank for 6 years, and then was involved with a group that started a bank here. We started a bank called LaGrange Banking Company. Now, we all know the history of LaGrange. There was a former LaGrange Banking Company. This was an entirely different venture here with this group. So after the downturn in the economy, I went to work for Poplar Creek Senior Care, which is an assisted living facility here in LaGrange. It's been here since 1999. And so I kind of jumped from banking into senior care.
In senior care, you're definitely in service.
Right.
Tremendous service to those folks.
Yes. And, oftentimes it's very special when some of the people there are members of our church that I've known for a long, long time, them and their families.
Yeah. So you're definitely an important part of people's families in that position. So when you became chair of the deacons, what pastor did you serve under?
Dr. Baxter the first time, and then the second time went with Kaye Ferris.
Okay, good. And so how was it being chair of the deacons as opposed to being, I assume you worked a lot more closely with the minister?
Yes. Certainly when you're serving in the chairman's role, then you're going to spend a lot of time with the pastor or the different committees of the church. So you're very involved in working with them concerning the operations of the church.
And was it different working with the Dr. Baxter versus Kaye Ferris, just their personalities and such?
Yes.
Yeah.
Each leader has their own set of personalities, and of course, it's a little bit intimidating for me with Dr. Baxter because he'd been here so long. And so to work with him and then to work for a minister, and I was on the search committee when Kaye was selected to come here. So then the opportunity to serve the new minister coming into the church and wanting to help them in any way that you could as they settled in the church.
Do you have particular things that were accomplished during your years as deacon chair that you were especially pleased about?
I was trying to think some of the things. I don't believe that I was ever involved in a building project here at the church. Had been around when they were going on, but we had not done any great building project. I know that we were going through the building of the 4-story children's annex, and I was involved in helping us sell a piece of property across the street. The property was now Heather Graham's office, but we owned that piece of property. We sold that so that we could take that and reinvest our money more into that new annex building. I know that we had. I remember going on a mission trip with the youth to Colorado, and some of those type ministries was real important to me.
Well, and certainly those business transactions bring up the point that First Baptist is an important part of downtown LaGrange, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge anchor.
Yes. I think the fact that we anchor one of the corners here in LaGrange on the square is very, very important. It's just absolutely gorgeous to come in off the Parkway at nighttime and see the steeple rising above the town. It
really is. And then the carillons going off on the hour. I mean, there's just several different ways in addition to the
ministry. That's
the ministry.
Right. Yes.
So How was it working within with the structure of the church, the committee meetings and such? Did that take lots of your time? And
It does take a good bit of your time. I think that the history of the history that I know of the church, we rely a lot on committees. We have different committees for so many things here in the church. But I look at that as a way to involve the members. There's probably a committee that any interest they have, they could find a committee in the church to serve on. So I think it keeps people involved. And so, again, our church has been very, very strong with the committees system.
how is it, say, you're being at Poplar Creek versus here, and people expecting you to do what they want to do?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that working at Poplar Creek and again involved in senior care and having several members from our church
Yeah.
there, I can say that it's great when people like Anthony and Paul Blair will come out and sing to our seniors. That's just such a great ministry to those people. And I always take the opportunity to tell the families, guess who came by and sang today, so that they know that our ministers are very involved in that. I think that being involved in government, I get cornered a little bit about things that's going on in the county government around the community, and I enjoy doing that. So it's great to be able to share with them. And I think always the ability to, whatever resources that I can help the church that might be in the community to help connect them so that we can take advantage of that.
Well, and you bring up another major part of your career, and which is to say you're a really busy person. You've been involved in county government as chairman of the county commissions for several terms now.
Well, 2 terms. I'm starting my third term in January of this year, 2023. So, yes, I decided that I didn't have enough to do, so I got involved in politics about 9 years ago was when I made the decision that I would run for county commission chair, following Ricky Wolf, who was also served 2 terms as county commissioner. So, yes, that's been real good. I do believe that my involvement in the community has been very helpful, as you know a lot of people around the county, and my role is there is to help serve the citizens, and I've learned a lot about the way county government operates.
And do you end up feeling like you have sort of thousands of bosses?
Oh, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
When you're in a county of, say, 72,000 people, there's 72,000 people that might be looking to you for some answer. But I enjoy that. You have to enjoy being involved in government.
Well, and definitely all of these positions take a good bit of your time. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate that my work allows me to take some of that time, give back some of my hours to be involved in county government.
Well, good. Were there things, and then sort of back to the church, that you had hoped to accomplish during your years as deacon chair that didn't happen, or?
Well, I think that, I served as a one-year term twice. And so I think one of the issues is when you take office in October, and then you're out in 12 months, it's a very short term. And so you have goals for yourself that sometimes it's just really hard to achieve long term. I do believe that particularly in my first term, that our church was moving forward. There was a good times of growth during those years that I was serving, and I think we just moved the church forward in so many different fronts. And I know when Kaye come in, it was an opportunity to have a new pastor in our church. And there was a strong belief that we needed a young pastor to come into our church. I had always noticed that we put a lot of emphasis on young families in our church and opportunities for our children, which I think are very, very important. And so I can't, all I can say is that I felt like we were really trying to push forward so many of the different programs, because we do offer a lot of different programs in our community.
Yeah, we really do. So, were there any surprises as deacon chair?
Really, no.
Yeah,
I can't say that anything surprised me. maybe it prepared me to go into politics
I
because
bet.
you're dealing with people, but no great surprises.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I definitely wondered if that was, it's like, okay, you could do this with deacons and deacon chair. Let's
That's right.
see how else you can serve the community,
Mm-hmm.
so, which we appreciate. Tell us a little bit about the logistics. Did it take a lot of your time as deacon chair, and then as opposed to like the county commission?
Well, I would say that the county commission takes more time than being deacon chair. The fact that we had so many committees in the church, those committees function and they take care of certain parts or aspects of the church life. That my role, going to the finance committee, going to personnel committee, trying to attend different events that might happen, special events that happen through the year would require some time. But again, you had really good people. This church has a history of real strong leadership. And so it really made my job as deacon chair much easier.
Okay. And then a sort of specific question that was brought up, I think, by Marion Nivens when he was deacon chair was when the COVID pandemic hit. And so you would have been somewhat involved with that, and then especially at the county level and at Poplar Creek.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how you navigated those
Okay.
first months and a couple of years.
Well, I will say, start with my work as senior care. I kind of tell people all the time that I have a daughter that's a nurse practitioner for public health. I have a son-in-law that works in management here at the ER in LaGrange. And so they kept my head filled with all of the information about COVID. So from a Poplar Creek standpoint, of course, when COVID first hit, we were warned that it was really going to take out the older part of our population, was going to be very dangerous to them. So we were greatly concerned. And we just didn't know what we were fighting. And so as we went through that process there at Poplar Creek, and we had a couple of bad situations there where we lost some residents and a staff member.
And most every nursing home or care home,
Yes.
almost in the country did.
I think, look back on it now, one of my saddest days was when I looked up and I had 2 ambulances backed up to the front door, and the story had just been out about the facility there in Pennsylvania where a lot of people had died, and so it was weighing heavily on you. Well, I think that I was able to take some of the knowledge that I got there to take that to the county level, and working with the county manager, we did some things to try to limit our exposure at the government center or exposure to our citizens. We did lots of public service Facebook announcements with the mayor of LaGrange and the other mayors in the community. So we were trying to get out in front of the public and tell what we knew and ask for their cooperation. And then at the church, I know there was a couple instances where I could kind of share with leaders here at the church as to what was going on as they were trying to make decisions about church services or how do we gather large groups for different events. So I was able to use that across all 3 areas.
Yeah, very good. And that an unfortunate case, but still a time when your outside expertise would have greatly benefited the church too.
Right. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit. I know you've been involved in other committees such as the dental clinic.
Right. Yes. Yes. The dental clinic is one that we started 2007, and there was an effort here in LaGrange to start like a free medical and dental clinic for the citizens. And so I talked to a couple of Dr. Baxter, talked to then the director, president of the hospital, Jerry Folks, about the idea of the church starting the dental piece of that, because we had several dentists that were members of our church. And so we jumped out there real quick. We started with a little tiny portable trailer, and we later grew into the room in the basement of our annex building. And that was a great service to our community. I just didn't realize how important dental health was to your overall health. And so I think we as a church were able to get out out front on that issue We raised some money. The church was so gracious to give us a space, and with the great help of volunteers in our community, from dentists to dental assistants to people that would just come up here and volunteer their time, to Chick-fil-A, who would give meals to all our volunteers. But has been a great ministry for our church.
Good. And have there been other projects like that you've been involved with?
I think that was the largest
Yeah.
project, that we did that. I know that I've had some great fun over the years being involved with, like I said, I mentioned going with the youth one time to Paul Blair recruited a couple of us to drive the bus and 2 vans to Colorado. So we left out on a Tuesday morning and arrived in Denver in time to pick up the students as they flew in on that Thursday afternoon and toured around Colorado. So I was involved in that mission and several other smaller events that happened in the church.
Well, good. Well, is there anything else you want to add about your...
Well, I think the most important thing is I love this church. It's been a very important part of our community for a long, long time. And I think if you go back and read the history of our church, that you can have a great appreciation for how long we've been able to operate and serve the Lord and serve this community for so many decades now. That's the most important message I have.
Well, good. Well, we appreciate your service and we appreciate your sharing this interview with us today.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.